If you
Hello, and thanks for staying with us. You've tuned in to another program by the American Family Association of New York. I'm Frank Schroeder. I'll be your host for this evening's program. We're taking a look at Judeo-Christian values versus secular utopia. And from time to time, we as a nation have to take a look at ourselves. The culture war, that's what we're speaking about. The United States was indeed conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. And in his Gettysburg Address, President Lincoln reminded us that our nation was being tested. And he asked whether a nation so conceived and so dedicated could long endure. Well, we certainly survived the Civil War, but we're engaged in another kind of war, a culture war right now. And exactly what the outcome of that will be, we're going to explore with our guest. Very happy to have in the studio today Father Philip Eichner. Father Philip Eichner graduated from Chaminade High School. He then entered the Marianist Novitiate. He graduated from the University of Dayton. He then got his degree in theology from the University of Freiburg in Switzerland. He was ordained a priest in 1966. He was then the president of Chaminade High School for 25 years and has been the president of Kellenberg High School for almost 25 years. Welcome and thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Frank.
So I don't know if I'm overstating this, that we're dealing with a culture war. You have been observing our society for many decades. Have I overstated it?
No, I think it's very true. It's a philosophical and a political crisis in the United States because it touches our foundations. And when you touch foundations, the building shakes. And our building, our American society is shaking. It doesn't know which way to go.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the foundation. You are a student and teacher of history. You have often spoken about our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence. When we talk about a Judeo-Christian values, how does that relate to our nation?
It's a very interesting question because every society, no matter what it is, communist, Nazi, every society has to have an overarching philosophy. What is this philosophy on which everything hangs? You have to have a philosophy. Muslims, they want Sharia. That's an overarching philosophy. And when our nation was founded, these men were historians, they were philosophers, they were linguists, they knew that.
The Founding Fathers.
Founding Fathers, and they said it in the Declaration of Independence. From the very beginning, they established here is what's going to be our overarching philosophy. Now, if you just analyze the words, we hold these truths to be self-evident. We're not going to defend them, we're not going to argue, we're saying this is going to be the rock stone on which we build our political, social edifice. Very clear from the beginning. And they chose the Judeo-Christian ethic. That was Greco-Roman, Judeo-Christian, which they all professed. When we say it was Judeo-Christian, we don't mean it was the denomination.
So in other words, they weren't imposing religion per se. Okay.
No, they're saying that this ethic, this philosophy, this theology, which we have received over the past 2,000-3,000 years, is what we want as our foundation. And when you notice they use the word we, as a group, hold these truths. Now they use the word truth. Truth, not opinions. And you say you have in your title there this weasel word, value. Weasel word, that's a weasel word.
Why do you say that?
Because, first of all, I read a couple weeks ago, somebody made the statement that the word value was used by Nietzsche. And value is a subjective term. It's not an objective term. It's mine. I value. So values really mean nothing outside of your own psyche.
Meaning they can shift. Everybody can decide what their values
Values
are.
are, yeah. Yeah, see, we, Judeo-Christian ethics says we have truths and we have principles. Principle is outside me. And I judge something on principles, like in science. You study gravity, and you form a principle. And you use that principle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a value.
Okay.
Every so often I'll have a student, well, who are you to say what gravity is? I says, well, let's test it. And if they're recalcitrant on it, I said, well, go up on the roof and jump off. Find out.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a
That's
principle.
a truth.
That's the truth. You'll come to terms with it. So value is, the value society teach he has high values. Well, those are all subjective judgments.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the use of the word ideal.
So Judeo-Christian values are Judeo-Christian principles.
Principles.
They are articulated.
Correct.
And therefore subject to attack.
Correct.
Whereas sometimes secular values, they're constantly moving. They're shifting all over the place.
And your values are your values, and mine, and there the twain shall meet.
Sounds great.
It is, yeah.
Sounds very freeing. How are we doing?
Very poorly, because there's this whole question of prejudice, the whole question of ego. I feel I'm superior to you, so my value puts you in a little lower realm. Well, the Christian principles that Jefferson enunciated, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed, another important word. You don't earn an endowment. It's given. It's a given.
Endowed by?
Their creator. Now, part of our problem is that I've seen over the past 5 years that our president has quoted that twice.
President Obama?
Yes, without the word creator. That's left out. Wow. And he's made the statement, we are not a Christian country. Well, he should have said we are no longer a Christian country. But we were a Christian country, meaning the Christian values, the Judeo-Christian values, and 10 Commandments were part and parcel of American society. They were on our courtrooms. They were in our classrooms. Now what has happened? We've got rid of them. What have we replaced the Judeo-Christian ethic with? That's the $64,000 question.
Well, from your observations, how would you answer that? What is it being replaced with?
It's replaced by the imperial self. My rights.
What do you mean?
Myself, what I think is good. I am the ultimate arbiter of reality, and I create my own reality. A Supreme Court justice recently said a few years ago, this is the essence of America, then everyone can create themselves as they want. They can create their own values, they can create their own philosophy, etc. Well, I can have a philosophy where I don't like this ethnic group. Who's the denier?
And that's happened in other societies.
Oh, yes. And it's a great temptation in our own. That's why he said, we hold truth self-evident that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Now, those are very strong principles. Principles. And they are derived from the theological, the religious truths of the New Testament.
So when President Obama says that we are not a Christian nation, what is he saying we are?
It's up to every individual. You create your own theology, your own religion, your own right and wrong. See, that goes against the whole Judeo-Christian ethic where God made you in his image and likeness. I'll give you a little vignette, a little anecdote. I was teaching class to a group of juniors in high school, teaching theology course. And one girl asked me this question. Put her hand up. I don't remember her name. And she said, "Father, if you were not a Christian, would you act differently?" That's a good question. And for me, I said, well, this is going to be a teachable moment. You know, I'm teaching. You can drive your Mack truck right into the center square.
You saw your opportunity.
Oh, yeah. So I said, if I were not a Christian, I would act differently, yeah. Of course, then she asked the killer question, how? What would be the difference? Well, I took a leap. And there was a boy in class, middle row, third seat, who was a very unhappy young man, very unhappy, cynical, always tried to disturb things. Even the other kids didn't like him too much. Sat there, sullen. I said, if I were not a Christian, I would not put up with Brian. He'd be a grease spot in the back wall. And everybody, Brian just looks up at me. I said, I wouldn't put up with his distance, cynicism, lack of cooperation. I said, but you know, because I'm a Christian, he's in the image and likeness of God, number one. God created him and loves him. Secondly, Jesus shed his blood for him. Jesus' blood is on his soul. And thirdly, in Matthew 25, at the end of time, Jesus gives this beautiful image. The judge will come and separate the sheep from the goats. And he'll say to the sheep, come, blessed of my Father, you took care of me, you clothed me, you fed me, you visited me, you loved me. And the people say, Lord, we didn't see you. And Jesus gives this tremendous, the walls shake when you say it. What you did to the least of my brothers, you did to me. And I said, Brian, he's the least of our brothers. And so comes the end of time, Brian's going to be there. And Jesus is going to say to Brian, how did Father Philip treat you? Mm-hmm. He's going to be my judge. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's why I treat him as a child of God. I treat him as a brother of Jesus. And I see the blood of Jesus on his soul.
So the secular model would take a different view of the Bryans of the world.
Yeah, they would say, if he's bothering me, I get rid of him. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to tolerate anything that I don't feel comfortable with. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I would not only tolerate, but I would try my best to bring the best out in this person.
Well, you've given us the overarching philosophy of the Judeo-Christian nation as we were born. What is the overarching philosophy of the secular utopia, if you will?
Do it if you like it. The question of individual rights. There are no limits. There are no limits.
When you say no limits, a lot of secularists would say, we believe in freedom. Religion is constraining. Don't impose your values on me. What of the secularists and freedom?
They say freedom is the ability to do anything you want at any time without reference to something objective. It's a very strange thing. We don't treat that, we don't use that same philosophy in science. We calculate gravity. We know exactly what it does. There's no interpretation. Well, I feel it's this way. I want it that way. I want it the other way.
Not all based just on feelings.
No.
And hold that thought. Just if you've just tuned in, again, my name is Frank Schroeder. I'm your host tonight with the American Family Association of New York. We're here in the studio with Father Philip Eichner, the president of Kellenberg High School, and we're talking about the Judeo-Christian principles versus secular utopia. So, Father, you were telling us a little bit about the secular model, their thoughts of freedom and rights, because again, the founding fathers talked of freedom and rights. What's the difference? How do the secularists view it?
They often talked about responsibilities. And we don't have any responsibilities today. It's all weighted on the side of rights. Of rights. This is my right. A right to absolute autonomy. The autonomous person. Autonomy, not relationship. See, the Judeo-Christian says you are related. You are related to other people. You are part of a society. God's creation made us social beings. In fact, in the Catholic Church, political society is what's called a perfect society, meaning it has to exist. It was created. As soon as you have two people, you have a sociality. You have a society. And this society are boundaries. Other people's rights are boundaries to me. If I say there are no boundaries, that means I don't respect anybody else's rights.
So with rights come responsibilities.
Absolute.
Not so necessarily, that's not the way the secular view would be.
No, this person's dignity, this person's value, that's why the Declaration said equal. And their equality, their person, their talents, their role, their right for a place in the sun is a limitation to me. The goods, they have a right to goods, as the Holy Father says. Everybody has a right to this, and I can't just be selfish, whether it's in money or power or anything else.
One of the commandments of the secularists is thou shalt not judge. We have a very non-judgmental society. What do you say of that?
Well, there are a couple instances when I get that in a classroom. Of course, St. Thomas says truth is always in the judgment, Now I said, would you want to go to a doctor who went to a pass-fail medical school? Oh no. You judge very cautiously on who you want to be your physician. You judge his qualities. You judge his capacities. You judge his history. You're exercising judgment every day. Now, sometimes the judgment is correct, sometimes it's not. One of the reasons you're in school is to learn how to judge things, to know their natures. You don't create the nature is. God creates the nature.
Well, that's interesting because decathlete Bruce Jenner is now Caitlyn Jenner. So apparently God did not make determinations. We now make our own determination right down to whether you're a man or woman. And we're told that if you judge that, you're like a Cro-Magnon. Caitlyn Jenner is supposedly a woman now, and if you say differently, there's something wrong with you. You're being too judgmental.
Well, I would say this is an individual case, and you cannot extrapolate from that to anything else. What is the psychology that's there? What is the physiology that's there? And that's where I say, I don't judge. This is an individual's psychic stability. And no one can judge that. Whether it's healthy, whether it's out of fear, whether it's out of many different reasons. It's in the realm of psychology, it's in the realm of nature. It's somewhat like some of the scientific truths that we have in health. We don't exactly know how they work. So here we don't exactly know what has gone on in this person's life. The exception here does not prove the rule.
Well, let's talk about a little bit more of the secular model. That is that everybody decides their own values. And again, it sounds good. Don't impose your values on me. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that philosophy? Sounds free to me.
It is free, but I tell my students, look, if you want to be totally free, where do you go?
To be totally free, Greenwich Village?
No, There's constraints there, there's traffic lights, there's buildings. Go to the jungle. In the jungle, you are absolutely free, but you're free to eat or be eaten. Survival of the fittest.
Mm-hmm.
That's free.
Mm-hmm. That's
It's
total freedom.
Total freedom, and it's chaos. It's chaos. And you don't want to live in that total freedom. You want your rights protected. You want your property protected. You know, it's like the college kid who wants to be free of everything. And then 10 years later, he has a wife, 2 kids, a house, a mortgage, a car, a dog, and a fence, and a lawn included. All of a sudden, he wants... I think, if I would say this, I think not the second President Bush was incorrect, philosophically correct, when he says the world wants freedom. No, they want security first. Mm-hmm. They will sacrifice a great deal of freedom for security. Mm-hmm. And this 28-year-old guy, he wants security. He wants limits. He wants protection. Mm-hmm. He wants his rights to be guarded. Mm-hmm. He wants the law. While in college, he was antinomian. Don't fence me in. But now he is, and he's happy that way. Mm-hmm. See, there's a...
Well, you give a good example. You speak of total freedom, and you talk of law, and the most basic that affect most of us, at least who live in the Northeast, are traffic laws.
Absolutely right. It's a perfect example.
Total freedom, no traffic lights, no stop signs, no speed limits, and let everybody go out on the road.
That's
what
right.
happens?
Most of you be dead.
Yeah.
It's chaos. I mean, you use that traffic thing. These are accepted norms. Why? For the common good. See, Catholic theology speaks a great deal about the common good, the bonum commune, the common good. It's inherent in human nature. It's inherent. And law, government, is to determine the common good and protect it. Traffic laws are not ultimate in the sense of inalienable rights, but you can't live without them. Mm-hmm. And you now accept the fact, you trust that other people are going to follow them. Now there's a tremendous act of communal trust, that they're going to stop at the red light.
Mm-hmm. They don't say, don't impose your laws on me.
That's right.
So it works in our traffic study, but how about on the moral realm? When people say, hey, don't impose your values on me, leave me free to choose, what's wrong with that argument?
Because those values are real, and you're rejecting them. The value of another person. Do not harm. Do not harm. Respect the rights. Give people their due. They have a right to the part of the earth, too. That's basic. That's the 10 Commandments. Mm-hmm. Don't envy. Don't murder. Don't violate. Why? Because there's reality outside you which limits you.
You have been a priest. You were ordained when?
1966, right at the end of the council.
Okay. And so you have lived in a religious order. You live a religious life. Your viewpoint at this stage, having been a priest that long, of comparing the models, you certainly have experienced firsthand the fruits of living under Judeo-Christian principles, under Catholic principles. What are the fruits of living a life of secular values or your own values?
Part of it is that other people are going to do the same thing and run right over you. Mm-hmm. You see, you want to be independent, absolutely, but you want other people to follow rules.
But what are the fruits that you see as you look across our culture, drifting from religion, going more towards a secular society? What do you see the impact has been?
The impact has been a lot of unhappiness. Mm-hmm. A lot of unhappiness. You know,
dysfunction?
Dysfunction, that's the nice word we use today. And that's a good word. Mm-hmm. It's a very good word. How many families are dysfunctional? You see, the whole family thing is a big question.
What do you mean?
Society is concerned about family. Why? One person says, why should the state get involved in marriage? Because it's the sanity of society.
Right.
These kids, I say to them, you have kids born out of wedlock without a mother and a father. I say to my rest of students, they're going to be prone to mental illness, to drugs, to criminality.
That's not an opinion now. It's gone on
Studies,
long enough
yes.
with the divorce rate, with
Right.
Unwed motherhood. The chances of winding up in poverty are
Enormous.
multiplied.
It's enormous.
And
it's culture. See, people say, well, educate them. Well, no, it's culture first. This has destroyed culture. And I want to say, when you're dealing with children like that, I say to my students, if they are prone to these three things, and you know what, you're going to pay for it. If I can't get you to understand how evil it is, how bad it is that a child grows up that way, you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for these criminality. You're going to pay for this mental illness. You're going to pay for all this stuff. If I can't motivate you to the value of the other person, at least I'll appeal to your pocketbook.
From time to time, we look across, we go down to Wall Street, we look at the stock market, and there's always talk of a market correction. The shift from a more religious society to an irreligious society, secular society, are we heading for a market correction? And we're just in the last few seconds of our program.
Okay. Some people ask me that and say, what do you see for the future? I said, sometimes things get so bad that you have to have a correction. Society becomes so dysfunctional. And I worry about that because, as I said before, security. You'll bring in a dictator, 1933. Why did they welcome Hitler? Not because he was anti-Jewish. They didn't know too much about it. But he gave stability. Mm-hmm. And you'll get to a dysfunctional society, and you'll welcome in any guy that's going to bring in. Look at South America. Somebody brings in stability.
Father Philip, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for being on our
privilege.
program. Thank you for joining us. Again, you've tuned in to another program from the American Family Association of New York. My name is Frank Schroeder. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Now.